Yeah, I'm not sure having me go first is the right approach or not, because I tend to having that very somber data. So, anyways, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Singapore and Corporate Jet Investor Asia 2019. As Al alluded to, my task here this morning is to give you the cold hard facts, and hopefully at the same time maybe provide you with some data that is a benefit to some of the other presentations that you'll have over the next 2 days. I mean, as we all know, the idea of these conferences always is to spur discussion, and so hopefully some of the information you'd see today will accomplish that as well. I will also say that a lot of the information you'll see today is coming from our fleet report, and also we have a new edition of Asian Sky Quarterly. It's outside on the back desk, and if you don't want to lug it around, we have everything on a thumb drive too. So all the reports and everything are available, and again, they're outside. And if I can also just say, I think our industry used to be plagued by a lack of market intelligence. So certainly a little tip to some of the other providers now. I mean, there's a proliferation of information that's available in market intelligence. Obviously, Corporate Jet Investor has their quarterly now as well. That gives you more insight on what's happening in the market too. And again, I also have a little bit of a tip to my friends at Jetcraft. Jetcraft now have a 5-year forecast as well. So, we tend to specialize in what's happened and where we are today. And now you have a great document that tells you about what's going to happen over the next 5 years looking forward. So there's a tremendous amount of information that's out there now that hopefully can help you all in making your business decisions. Today I'll talk a little bit about where we are and where the last couple of quarters have put us. 2018 was not kind to the region. The region as a whole saw its worst performance certainly over the last 3 years. The growth was not much, just 1.4%. And that was half of what it was 2 years ago. If you want to break that down specifically into who performed and who didn't perform, you can see here on the chart OEMs along the top, countries along the bottom. China still remains, if you will, the driver when it comes to a lot of the numbers that you see in the performance for the region. They represent the biggest fleet. So as China goes, kind of the rest of Asia goes. And when it comes to the OEM that certainly has the biggest market share, that would be Bombardier. So you've got Bombardier leading the way, and then with Textron, we've now grouped the Beechcraft and Cessna products together under Textron Aviation, and then you've got Gulfstream. So between those three top OEMs, you're covering over 75% of the market. And again, as you see, and we all know in the room, the Asia-Pacific region remains a long-range, large cabin market. Certainly over 50% of the fleet comes from those two categories alone. So 1,201 airplanes, how did we get there? In 2018, we saw, unfortunately, I'm going to have to move. 54 additions, new aircraft additions, 55 pre-owned aircraft additions, but a whopping almost 100 airplanes that left the region. And these are movements, aircraft that came into the region and aircraft that came out of the region. So for us, our experience with those deletions is really they were kind of sellers of three different types. We had guys that were upgrading, old G450, 550 guys getting into 650s or something else, XRS guys getting into 6000s. So there was a lot of upgrading going. But at the same time, we saw a number of guys exit the market, and those were probably guys that you would have said that were marginal users to begin with. They were 100 hours, 125 hours a year. I think as we all know, when economic times are a little bit challenging, it's hard to justify having that corporate aircraft, and so we certainly saw a fair share of those leave the region. And then we also certainly ourselves at Asian Sky Group experienced a number of buyers that were certainly, for lack of a better word, motivated, and they were motivated for a number of different reasons. Some because of their own personal situation, or likewise, business-wise, they needed to liquidate that, if you will, US dollar asset and get that money as quickly as possible. So certainly for us, we saw this type of sellers in the market. Breaking it down more regionally, the star performer actually is Southeast Asia. It's the one that performed the best. Interestingly, a complete reversal of fortune from last year, or 2017 to 2018. And likewise, the worst performer was Greater China. It gets even a little bit more interesting when you look at it on an individual country basis. Singapore was the top performer for the market last year. And way down at the bottom of the list, you'll see mainland China. Mainland China, the market there actually contracted. You actually lost airplanes through 2018 for a -6 airplanes. I've just added in here as kind of an interesting, if you will, view at that other aircraft market, as in the rotary. I mean, when you look at helicopters, though, China still remains the biggest market and the biggest performer, and where you're seeing the highest growth. The helicopter market on the other side, basically for 3-4 years now, has had consistent 5% or more growth per year, and certainly China has led that way and continues to lead that way. So again, whereas on the fixed wing side, they're bottom of the list, when it comes to the rotary, China remains top of the list. Now these are movements, aircraft coming into the region and aircraft leaving the region. Transactions are also a different measure, because sometimes you're going to have transactions that happen within China. A guy in Shanghai sells to a guy in Beijing, or you're going to have a guy in Beijing sells to a guy in Singapore. And so when you look at transactions, you get a little bit of a different view on what's happening as well, and probably more important, you get an idea of what the size of our market is, which is about $5 billion US. So new aircraft transactions have remained fairly unchanged over the last 3 years, but it's interesting to see the value of those transactions has dropped. On the same side, you'll see pre-owned aircraft, number of transactions has increased, and as you would sort of expect, the value of those has increased as well. So again, giving you visibility on the business transaction activity levels. And so what are we kind of seeing coming in and out of the region, or we did in the 2018? Not too surprising, given the region is a large cabin, long-range market. You're seeing 650s, you're seeing Global 6000, 8Xs, so all the big airplanes. And at the same time, what you're seeing leaving the region are the older generation 550, 450s, 7Xs, and so on. For me, the pre-owned additions is always kind of a mixed bag, because a lot of times that number gets swung because, you know, a training school in Australia bought 5 Lear 45s or something, and so that always tends to swing a lot of times where the pre-owned additions are. But very interesting on the new aircraft deliveries and deletions to see very much what we've seen in the other numbers. It's a big airplane market, the older ones leaving, the new ones coming in. Where are they going typically? The top 10 operators are here indicated. All except one are Greater China operators. So again, the China market dominating where the airplanes go, so not too surprisingly also dominating where most of the management companies are. And when you look at the fastest growing ones as well, not too surprising, again, they're Chinese operators, or Greater Chinese operators. So when I look at that China number again a little bit more, because it is such a driver for how the results end up, again, you've seen over the last 3 years, or last 3 years, certainly China held up, but again, 2018 we had a massive swing from plus 37, I think the number is, to -1, so almost a 10% swing in the numbers. And for us, those transactions that you saw in China, and again, this is just maybe something that comes up in another presentation later on. For us, those transactions they're complicated, they involve multiple parties, they tend to take an extraordinarily long time to bring across the finish line. For me, a lot of them are plagued by, shall we say, poor transparency. Not everyone's telling everyone what's going on. Most of the sellers, and I think I'll get a nod of a head from a number of people, most of the sellers continue to have above market expectations on what their aircraft is worth. And typically, we find that a lot of these sellers that we're dealing with, I mean, they're behind in their payments to the management company, they're behind in their payments to the finance company, the programs, everybody. And so this transaction suddenly takes on a whole new life of its own, involving multitude of parties, which again makes it very, very difficult to push across the finish line. You certainly need to have patience in the market these days. Also, when you're particularly dealing with the PRC transactions, you've got duty and VAT. Typically, you may have tax issues that you need to deal with, which go all the way back to how the aircraft was originally imported into China. And then if it is B-reg, you then have to do a re-exportation. You got to go back to the original port of entry. You got to deal with China Customs, get their sign-off, get their blessing, before even CAC gets involved and does the deregistration. And again, a lot of times there are physical changes that you need to do to the aircraft as well. You've got B-reg numbers on the underside of the wings. You've got bilingual placards throughout the whole aircraft and on the external surfaces as well. So again, there are changes to the aircraft physically that has to be done. So needless to say, you understand why then, if I'm a buyer, I may pass on that China airplane, please, and go look for something more locally that's a lot more straightforward, shall we say. So those PRC transactions are tough. But again, as you see, if you look at China over the last few years, I mean, the predominant aircraft going into that market is those large cabin long-range airplanes. And for me, interesting, if you look at the 650 number, which is 40-something here, and then pre-owns another 16, over the last 4 years, 2015, 16, 17, and 18, you've had 60 G650s that have gone into the greater China market. So we're talking 48 months, but 60 airplanes that have gone into that market, G650s. I mean, a tremendous market for Gulfstream with their flagship, if you will, on the 650. I mean, taking, if you will, more than one airplane a month into that market. And so again, when you look at market share, certainly the big airplane guys are doing very well, Bombardier and Gulfstream, but where they tend to be losing market share are on those mid-size and smaller light jet size. So this looks at the change in the market share over the last 5 years for the OEM. And again, this shows you where it's coming as far as the category large, long-range airplanes. And so that yellow line you can see just growing over the years. And then in particular in Greater China, you can see the dominance of Gulfstream, but you can also see the dependence of Gulfstream on that market. I mean, to a great extent, I think one of the reasons Bombardier has performed or was the leading OEM over the last year is their fleet is much more well spread out, shall we say, within the Asia-Pacific region. Gulfstream really has quite a large portion of their fleet based in the China market, and so as China goes for them, as China goes, it affects Gulfstream greatly. And again, you can see here the growth in the long-range and large cabin aircraft as well. As sort of a tip to the engine guys, we do now in our reports take a look at the engines as well. It's not just all about fixed wing and rotary. We also look at the engines as well, and certainly that market being dominated, well, I shouldn't say dominated, the largest stakeholder in that being Rolls-Royce. So that kind of, if you will, gives you to where we are sort of the end of the year, and kind of up till A-base, if you will. I think most of it at A-base were somewhat optimistic. A lot of us were experiencing, I think, heightened business activity levels. We were quite happy with the quality of the customer that was coming to the show, but that was April, and we're a couple of months on from that now. So every quarter, and it's in the Asian Sky Quarterly, we do a market survey. And for me, it's always interesting to see how the market survey numbers, which tend to be more touchy-feely, how they stack up versus the data. So not too surprising, maybe for the audience, if you look at the bottom light blue, that's the pessimism. And again, this question here is basically to all the people that respond to the survey is, how do you feel about the current economic environment? Are you optimistic or are you pessimistic? And again, not maybe too surprising to everyone in the room, and sort of the downer that Al alluded to that I would be spreading first thing here in the morning, pessimism is growing, and I think we've all seen that and are aware of that. So this is for the region, and when you break it down to more specific countries or more groups, the bottom light blue line, the one with that basically falling off the cliff image, that is Greater China. And so you can go back to sort of the end of the first quarter of 2018, and as far as optimism, it just vanished. And so through 2018, we saw that continue to drop, and really we didn't see a reversal in that until towards the end of the year. If you will, there seemed to be some light at the end of the tunnel through the first 2 quarters, but again, since then, things have turned more pessimistic again. And again, interesting, so you've sort of got this S-curve, if you want, where we came down, we went up, and we come down again. The next graph over, you've basically got the Shanghai Stock Exchange, and you've got basically the RMB US dollar exchange rate. And again, the same factors. I mean, as we all know, how you feel, whether you're optimistic or pessimistic, determines so much what you do. And so here, likewise, you've seen the markets perform in the same sort of drop, up, drop, same with the exchange rate. So, and again, not too surprising, it's all about tariffs, okay? I mean, if you go back and you see, the first tariffs were introduced back in March, April. Well, that's when we tipped over the edge. And then it just got worse throughout the whole 2018 with round 1, round 2, round 3. And so again, the drop just continued and continued and continued until we got towards the end of the year when the dialogue seemed to become much more optimistic. There were a whole bunch of interactions between the US and China, and a truce was declared towards the end of the year. And lo and behold, we saw the curve turn, and everyone became a little bit more optimistic. Seemed like the end was in sight. But again, as we've all witnessed over the last 2 quarters, that's turned sour again, and we're back to more tariffs, and as a result, we've turned pessimistic again. So really, it has a lot to do with tariffs, but also, frankly, it has a lot to do with the Chinese economy, which is not performing very well. You're seeing, and again, you can say part of the reason why it's not performing well is because of the tariffs, but a lot of the problems that China is experiencing at the moment, and that market's experiencing at the moment, was there before. Yes, maybe the tariffs just exacerbated it, but industrial production, retail sales, if you will, the Chinese economy is losing momentum, it's stalling out. And so that, likewise, is affecting the Asia-Pacific region and everyone's outlook. I mentioned here the Belt and Road Initiative because I think it's something you should keep an eye on. And I'll mention it in a minute. So again, when we look before at optimism and pessimism, this is utilization. So not too surprisingly again, maybe when you're not feeling so optimistic, or again, you're watching that bottom line a little bit more than you used to, you're not flying as much. And I think as you may have heard in A-Base, we're now working with the WingX guys, and so we're able to get more accurate data on how the aircraft are being used in the Asia-Pacific region. So the little chart here on the right, you've got the light blue bar is flights, and then the dark blue bar are flight hours, and then the yellow lines are the year-over-year change. So as you can see through January, February, March, the number of flights has been decreasing. And again, year over year, initially they were better than last year, but really everything in sort of March, April timeframe has gotten now to where it's actually worse than last year. So again, just if you will, putting some more data to the previous slide, which said, I'm not flying as much. Here's some data that actually shows you what those numbers are like. So again, year-on-year growth, if you look at it, you're off 6% than where you were a year before. So again, people are flying less. And so for the management companies in the room, they're dealing with that probably on a daily basis. So not too surprising, you're not very optimistic, you're not flying your airplanes, you don't feel good about the economy. Wow, big surprise, your purchase intention is not what it used to be. Any buyer hates uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty, normally it says, I wait. And so the top light blue line there is the I'm not sure line. And so it's really increasing quarter to quarter where more and more the market is saying, I don't know really where we're going and whether buying an aircraft is the right idea at the moment. So you've got that affecting your purchase intentions. If you look at the market itself, what's available out there, I think the industry as a whole has done a good job through 2018 of burning off that inventory. And I think you've probably read a lot of pieces that talks about what's kind of left. And again, I think most of the people in the industry will say, look, it's never going to get any better than 7 or 8% of the market or the fleet for sale because there are a lot of airplanes that are just never going to sail. So I think for us that are in the aircraft transaction side in the room, I mean, a lot of it is, it's hard to find a good airplane these days as well. And so not only are there, maybe not as many purchase intentions, but when you do have someone who's interested, finding them the right airplanes are a big challenge too. And because of that also, if you will, those purchase intentions, maybe not as much demand, you're also seeing where the pricing, where it had been on a rise, is now flattening out as well. So the availability of aircraft is stagnant, if you will. Pricing is topping out. Days on market is changing, staying relatively the same. Probably not changing a big deal in the Asia-Pacific region, because if I'm going to buy an airplane, I'm typically a U.S. buyer. I'm going to look for something in my neighborhood, so I'm only going to look at Asia if I have to. So again, airplanes in Asia typically stay on the market longer. So again, inventory levels, this is simply the number of aircrafts available for sale times their asking price. So again, we've seen that inventory burn off, but lately it's been, shall we say, fuzzy. And so a lot of the momentum in that market, the market has gone away. So when you sort of take a look for me at 2019 and what we're going to see happen, for me there's a lot of new exciting products on the market, and I think that will always stimulate demand. And so we're going to see a lot of those airplanes coming into the region, again, because they're the right size airplanes. So 500s and 600s and certainly the global 7500s. But otherwise, as he pointed out, and you've seen the data, the momentum is not great at the moment. So again, that's going to hang over the rest of the year. Pre-owned market still remains very active though. But again, I don't think from a pre-owned side we're going to see as many deletions as we did last year. For me, last year was kind of a cleansing, if you want to call it, and I don't think we're going to see the same level of activity. The U.S. market still is the dominant market. China's not strong, and like I said, pricing still remains the same. So if you will, maybe on an optimistic note, I don't think 2019 will be as bad as 2018. Like I said, we're going to see more new aircraft deliveries. We're going to see less pre-owned aircraft leaving the region. So on a plus, you're going to see more aircraft entering into the fleet, so you'll see a better result for the rest of this year going forward. And that's it. So, again, I encourage you to just grab a copy or pick up a thumb drive. I know Jetcraft have got copies of their 5-year forecast out there as well, and copies of the CJI Q quarterly is out there as well. So again, as I said, tremendous amount of information that's available for you. So I encourage you all to go pick up a copy.
So on the cheery note that, stay, questions, that 2019 is not going to be as bad as 2018. Thanks for that.
Yeah. But yes, as you would say, but it was so bad, nothing could be worse kind of affair. So.
Do we, 2020? What's 2020 going to be like, Jeff?
Again, my own personal feeling, first of all, is also what will affect 2019. I've been in China 22 years, and so I certainly see it will, if you will, the issues between China and the U.S. are going to get resolved. As we all know, this is a long dance, and but I do think it will get resolved, and it will get resolved sooner rather than later, and that will dramatically affect the rest of this year. As I mentioned earlier, China has this Belt and Road initiative that they're trying to sell around the world. It's pretty tough to do that if your own kitchen isn't working. So I think there's tremendous pressure on the Chinese government and President Xi to get his own house in order, because for him to go forward and sell what he wants to sell internationally, he's got to do that. So I think it will get resolved, and so that will certainly improve the results for 2019. And likewise, I think it'll just go from strength to strength as far as 2020 as well.
So basically, your thesis is relying on a rational President Trump. Any questions for Jeff? It's nice that one person who's voted is feeling fairly optimistic. If you go into Slido and put questions, any questions from the group? Okay, Jeff, one more. I'm feeling that the US is starting to slow down. What do you think?
I sort of get that feeling a little bit as well. And again, I think it's just whether it's for lack of a better expression, a pregnant pause, or I think there's just a lot of uncertainty, and people are kind of waiting for the clouds to part and for us to see a way forward. And again, it's just there are a lot of issues on the table at the moment, and some of those need to get sort of resolved so that people can kind of, I guess, get that good feeling back again, if you want to call it, and get back into the buying mood. I think the other underlying problem, I think to a certain degree, is, and I'm sure we'll hear about it from others in the room, again, there is a lack of available good airplanes too. And so whether that is putting a little bit of a damper on the business volumes that we're seeing in the U.S., that could be another factor. There's just not a lot of great airplanes out there, and when you start looking around for that specific airplane that your buyer's looking for, you don't have a lot of choice. And so it certainly means that a lot of people are coming to look at those hard-to-look-at airplanes in China or in other areas of Asia-Pacific region. But again, they're difficult, complicated transactions. So,
any more questions?
I'm here for...
I've got one. You've got one on slide 8, which is... I'm not actually sure how this one works. What do your crystal balls say about these nuts and bolts?
I don't know.
A, do you have crystal balls?
Crystal balls and nuts and bolts, and I'm not quite sure what is meant by the nuts and bolts of the industry, I'm afraid, and so...
Okay, I think that's a good answer. Any more questions? Brilliant. Thank you very much for setting the tone.
Yeah, I mean, maybe somewhat of a little bit of an answer to that. I mean, we do spend quite a lot of time at Asian Sky Group
polishing your
balls. Polishing our crystal ball, exactly. Looking at other aspects of the industry, the MRO, FBO, and so on and so forth. And certainly, for me, it's a challenging time for the third-party suppliers, the MROs, the FBOs, and the management companies. Everyone is trying to find new sources of revenue as well. Everyone's very focused on the bottom line and wanting to get decent returns. So everyone is looking at other business opportunities as well, which has kept us quite busy on our market research and consulting side. There are opportunities out there, but certainly again, it's a challenging market out here. There's a lot of incumbents that are well placed and well positioned, so it's a tough market to come into and crack, but certainly a lot of interest out there, a lot of activity, a lot of it on the rotary side as well, but also on the fixed wing.
Great, and as you're speaking, it's great to see that 64% are fairly optimistic for the year ahead. If you're the 7% very pessimistic, please go and talk to someone outside. We're happy to listen to your concerns. Don't do anything drastic. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Al.